Most shonen series throw around death like confetti, killing characters left and right, only to bring them back through some magical resurrection or plot convenience. One Piece does the exact opposite. Confirmed canon deaths are incredibly rare in this world, but when they do occur, they hit with the force of a Yonko's attack. Today we're diving deep into the most brutal confirmed deaths in One Piece history. From executions designed to break spirits to sacrifices that defined legacies, these deaths showcase just how dark and unforgiving the One Piece world can become when the stakes are at their highest. By the way, if you like these kinds of breakdowns, consider subscribing. I do these every week, and that way you won't miss the next one. Let's start with a death that redefined what physical endurance means in anime and manga. Kozuki Oden's execution wasn't just brutal because of how he died, it was brutal because of how long he was forced to endure unimaginable agony while maintaining his resolve to save his retainers. When Oden was sentenced to death by boiling, most people expected it to be over quickly. After all, how long could anyone possibly survive in a pot of boiling oil? The answer turned out to be 1 full hour, but not in the way anyone could have predicted. Oden made a deal with Kaido that if he could survive 1 hour in the boiling oil, his retainers would be allowed to live. What happened next became the stuff of legend. Oden didn't just endure the boiling oil, he entered that pot and immediately hoisted a wooden platform above his head, supporting all 9 of his retainers who were standing on top of it. Think about what that means for a moment. This man was being boiled alive at temperatures reaching over 700 degrees Fahrenheit while simultaneously holding up nearly 1,000 pounds of weight above his head. The oil wasn't just hot when he entered. It kept getting hotter as Orochi ordered his men to increase the temperature throughout the execution. Oden maintained this impossible feat while his lower body was literally being cooked. When most people would have collapsed from the pain within seconds, Oden was not only conscious, but actively protecting others. The temperature eventually reached 1,292 degrees Fahrenheit, which is dangerously close to the temperatures used for human cremation. Oden was essentially being cremated alive, while performing an act of superhuman strength and will. Even after surviving the full hour and proving that his legendary status wasn't just reputation, Orochi couldn't allow such defiance to stand. In a final act of cruelty, Kaido shot Oden in the head just as the samurai was about to speak his famous catchphrase. Oden's last words were cut off mid-sentence, but the people of Wano completed them for him, showing that his spirit would outlive his body. He died with a smile on his face, knowing he had saved his retainers and inspired his people even in his final moments. But Oden's death represents something deeper than just physical brutality. It showcases how the corrupt system in Wano used public executions as psychological warfare against the population. The extended nature of his torture wasn't just meant to kill him, it was designed to break the spirits of anyone who might dare to resist Kaido and Orochi's rule. Instead, it had the opposite effect, turning Oden into a martyr whose sacrifice would eventually fuel the liberation of his homeland decades later. Moving from feudal Japan to the grand stage of Marineford, we encounter another death that redefined what it means to go out fighting. The statistics of Whitebeard's final battle read like something out of a mythology textbook rather than a pirate story. 267 sword wounds covered his body. 152 gunshot wounds had failed to bring him down. 46 direct hits from cannonballs had barely slowed his advance. Most tellingly of all, there wasn't a single scar on his back because Whitebeard had never run from a fight in his entire life. What made his death even more brutal was watching him fight on after sustaining injuries that should have been immediately fatal. When Akainu killed Ace with that magma-powered punch through the chest, Whitebeard's rage reached levels that terrified even the Marines. His retaliation against Akainu was swift and devastating, but the Admiral's counterattack left lasting damage. In the manga, the true extent of Akainu's magma punch was even more horrifying than what the anime showed. Whitebeard didn't just lose half his moustache, he lost half his face, continuing to fight with a wound that exposed skull and brain matter. His final moments were about sending a message to the world that the age of pirates would continue, despite the Marines' best efforts to end it. With his dying breath, Whitebeard confirmed what Roger had started decades earlier. The One Piece was real, and a new generation of pirates would eventually claim it. He died standing because legends don't kneel, even in death. The brutality doesn't stop with legendary pirates and samurai warriors. When we look at the younger generation, The death of Ace stands as perhaps the most emotionally devastating moment in One Piece history. What makes Ace's death so particularly cruel isn't just the method of his execution, but the timing and psychological warfare behind it. The entire Summit War was fought to prevent Ace's public execution. Hundreds of pirates died storming Marineford. Whitebeard sacrificed his life and the lives of his crew members. Luffy pushed his body beyond its limits and nearly died multiple times just to reach his brother. And for one brief shining moment, it looked like they had succeeded. Ace was free from his sea stone shackles, reunited with Luffy, and making his escape alongside the Whitebeard pirates. Then Akainu said exactly the right words to trigger Ace's pride, and everything fell apart in seconds. When the Admiral insulted Whitebeard's legacy, Ace couldn't help himself. He turned back to defend his father's honor, walking straight into the trap. Akainu's magma-powered fist didn't just punch through Ace's torso, it completely destroyed his internal organs, while Luffy watched helplessly from just a few feet away. The visual of that scene burns itself into your memory. Ace's body going limp as magma dripped from the gaping hole in his chest. His vivre card crumbling to ash in Luffy's trembling hands. The look of absolute shock and disbelief on Luffy's face as his big brother collapsed in his arms. Ace's final words were about gratitude, thanking Luffy and everyone who had tried to save him for showing him that his life had meaning. What makes this death particularly brutal is how it represents the complete failure of everything the rescue mission stood for. All that sacrifice, all that bloodshed, all those lives lost. And in the end it came down to Ace's inability to walk away from an insult. The Marines didn't just execute a pirate, they broke the spirit of the future Pirate King. The psychological torture continues with deaths designed specifically to intimidate populations into submission. Shimotsuki Yasuie's public execution in Wano represents one of the most twisted forms of cruelty in the entire series. The flower capital citizens were forced to watch as this beloved figure was shot while laughing uncontrollably due to the defective smile fruits that had poisoned their emotions. Yasui couldn't even die with dignity. The smile fruits effects meant that no matter how much pain he felt, no matter how terrified he was in his final moments, his face was locked in a grotesque smile. His daughter Toko was forced to watch her father's execution while experiencing the same involuntary laughter, creating a scene so disturbing that it haunts viewers long after the episode ends. This wasn't just an execution, it was theatre, designed to break the spirit of Wano's people. Orochi wanted the citizens to see what happened to anyone who dared oppose his rule. But the smile fruits turned even this moment of resistance into a mockery. Yasui died laughing, Toko laughed while grieving, and the entire crowd was trapped in a cycle of false joy while witnessing genuine horror. Other deaths in One Piece carry the weight of deliberate sacrifice, where characters choose their own destruction to protect what matters most. Pedro's self-detonation during the whole Cake Island escape represents this category at its most explosive. When Big Mom's forces cornered the Straw Hats and their chances of escape dropped to nearly zero, Pedro made a calculation that his life was worth trading for their freedom. The brutality of Pedro's death lies not in its violence, but in its premeditation. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision or a last desperate gamble. Pedro had been preparing for this sacrifice throughout the entire arc, carrying explosive devices specifically for this purpose. He knew from the beginning that he might not survive this mission, and he was completely at peace with that reality. When Pedro detonated those explosives, the explosion was massive enough to be seen from miles away, ensuring that his sacrifice would give the Straw Hats the time they needed to escape Whole Cake Island. His final words to Carrot about carrying on the will of the Minx turned his death into a passing of the torch, rather than just a tragic loss. Even more heartbreaking are the silent deaths, the ones where characters die without being able to cry out or call for help. Don Quixote Rocinante's murder by his own brother Doflamingo represents this category in its most tragic form. Using his devil fruit power to create a soundproof barrier around himself and Law, Rocinante died in complete silence to ensure that the boy he had grown to love could escape undetected. The image of Rocinante's bullet-riddled body propped against that treasure chest, still maintaining his devil fruit power even in death, showcases a level of dedication that transcends normal human limits. He didn't just die to protect Law, he used his final moments to guarantee that protection would continue even after his heart stopped beating. The soundproof barrier didn't fade until Rocinante was completely gone, meaning he maintained conscious control of his abilities while bleeding out from multiple gunshot wounds. As I mentioned at the start of the video, these deaths share a common thread that separates them from typical shonen casualties. They're not about shock value or dramatic moments that get reversed in the next arc. Each one serves to reinforce the harsh reality that in One Piece's world, some prices can only be paid with life itself, and once that payment is made, there are no refunds or second chances. The pattern becomes even clearer when we examine deaths that serve as political weapons rather than simple casualties of battle. The assassination of Nefertari Cobra during the Reverie demonstrates how death becomes a tool for reshaping global narratives. Cobra wasn't killed because he posed a military threat to the world government. He was eliminated because he asked the wrong questions about the Void Century and discovered truths that threatened their carefully constructed version of history. What makes Cobra's murder particularly insidious is how it was immediately weaponized for propaganda purposes. The world government didn't just kill a troublesome king, they framed Sabo for the assassination, turning the Revolutionary Army's chief of staff into a global terrorist in the eyes of the world. This single death accomplished multiple strategic objectives simultaneously, eliminating a truth seeker or providing justification for future military actions against revolutionary forces. The theme of weaponized death extends to more recent revelations. When Absalom disappeared and was later confirmed dead at the hands of the Blackbeard pirates, it revealed how even death can be harvested for power. His devil fruit ability was stolen and given to Shiryu, turning Absalom's murder into a strategic acquisition rather than simple revenge or territory dispute. When Monet died on Punk Hazard at the hands of Caesar Clown, her death served to demonstrate the complete ruthlessness of the scientist who had been experimenting on children. When Virgo was bisected by Law's powers and left to die in the facility's destruction, it showed the consequences of absolute loyalty to corrupt structures like the Doflamingo family. These deaths prove that Oda doesn't waste mortality on cheap thrills or temporary drama. Every confirmed death in One Piece serves the larger narrative, whether exposing corruption, demonstrating sacrifice, or showing the true cost of challenging absolute power. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching.